at the time, and then that's sent to our GIS back in our office. So we're reducing duplication of efforts there as well.
No, I think if I can, through the chair, just respond to Councillor Wolf, I think that from a practical service delivery perspective, there's some issues around gaps in service. There might be some over-service provision in some areas, but there's certainly concerns around under-service. And what we're doing here needs to be done, and there's a lot of good work occurring, and that's great, but there's still this problem here. And one of the challenges, I suppose, that the council's had is we haven't had normal for quite a long time. So we've been impacted by flooding, so we've had restoration work to deliver since 2008, basically. So there's probably around circa $140 million worth of flood damage that's occurred since then. So our approach to rural road maintenance for our Shire Road assets has been abnormal in that we've been delivering the restorative funding. So if we were, and we are, we'll touch wood apart from what's happened since Cyclone Debbie, transitioning to normal, we have to take a strategic approach to asset maintenance for our rural road network, and this information will lead to informing those decisions. But at the moment, right here today, we've got a couple of problems. One is there's some gaps, and two, we've got that overlay of restorative work that has to be completed, and now we're going to go through another realm of that. Somehow we have to achieve a degree of normality for people so that they have an idea of what amount of treatment they will receive for their road based on usage, demand and those types of things, and hopefully this data is going to provide some input into that. But I take the point that it's not right now, and this is not necessarily going to give us all the answers, but we do need it as well.
Yeah, so through the chair, just on your graph there where you've got red, black and yellow, right? So, and again, right, players have been saying to us, what are you doing? And through, we understand through the NDAA funding and fixing up 50 metres of road, all sort of stuff. So if you put that out there and say to a grader, go and fix all the red bits or whatever it is, it's going to be exactly the same. Ratepayers are going to say, what on earth are you doing?
Yeah, so you know, I was probably paying too much attention to that, but just to pick up on what I think.
That's just one thing, Scott, that just seems to, it's going to come up.
So one of the things, a strategy that our council will pursue through the chair is that, and I think this answers the question, is with the packages of work that will have to occur for restoration, we need to lobby for betterment funding to complement that so that we can get a better outcome for the overall road and make sure the transitions are right, and if there's other work that needs to be carried out so that we can get some economies of scale. That's I suppose, a good economic argument, but a political one as well. So that's probably one of the key learnings, I think, from the last round of restorative work.
With your DCP, how much road network have you managed to get done?
I think at the moment, I've been absent for a while, but I think it's about 40 to 80 segments with still 160 left, I believe.
So what distance is a segment, and how far apart do you take these readings?
Segments vary between 100 metres and maximum 5 kilometres, and we take it on a representative section of that segment. Where we find that a spot on that road, which is representative of that whole road, it can be difficult at times, but it helps us average the gravel depth across that segment.
I guess part of my questions follow on from what Councillor Roll said. I mean, the tools might be great, but I think we're, looking at the bigger picture is, the real condition of our roads. You can train someone on an accelerometer to do a roughness test, but take, for example, a black soil road in dry conditions, nice and smooth. So you're not going to get a reading where your gravel might be thin, and that unless you are testing it quite regularly. So I think that there might be some inaccuracies in that. And going back to the ratepayers, and we've been doing this in Capella. I've been doing a bit with Jason Akers and Jason Hawley up there, where we've had good success on some roads by then going and talking to the road users. So I think that we need to engage the road users more so, and then it might be using these tools in specific locations.
Yeah.
We're not on those roads every day, you know, you can take a map like that to these guys and, you know, go, this is what we're doing, and we'll still have unhappy road users.
Yeah, and
I
what you
just
say
think that it's
is right, councillor Lacey, through the chair, but you do need to have some degree of science behind making our decisions, because we, as you quite rightly know, you can go to one area of our regional council area, which is significant in size, and there'll be a major concern or a number of concerns around roads. And then we've got the unenviable task of looking at that in contrast to another area of the regional council area where their concerns are legitimate as well. And treatments might be, more significant treatments might be needed in one patch than another. The users don't know that. They're not using all the roads. You know, the worst thing that could happen, I'm sure that we don't do this, but if we were to play to the concerns of a group of ratepayers and jump in and do a resheet project or something like that, it could be a waste of our resources. It might need a lesser treatment. And by making value judgments based on real data, there can be a determination made that we can push that asset a bit further and then schedule a resheet on this date, which is a significant upgrade, or this is so bad it has to go to the priority list. But it's hard to, I suppose, and Ray, you'd appreciate from this segment the importance of roads assets to a regional council this size. You can see it in the nature of the comments from the elected members. It's a very important issue. But it's hard, I suppose, to get your head around it when we know we're not doing it perfectly right now, because we've got some unsatisfied ratepayers and some that are over-serviced. Getting it right is difficult to achieve. This will help. We have to advance this and get this to a point where it can help inform the decisions. Otherwise, we become reactionary based on who is grumbling the most or who is lobbying council more effectively, and that's not the best thing for the asset. So until we get the data, we can't make the best decisions. But to pick up on Councillor Rolf's point, we've got to do something different in the meantime, because it'll be a little while before this can filter into making decisions for the rural road network.
That's also what I'm saying too, is if we're going to have these tools, we've got to make sure that they work for us. Because some of these guys that we've been talking to at Capella, they're not your grumblers. You know, they've come back through me because they didn't go through their previous council. Nothing had been done on their road for 10 years. So they barely even did a grader road, let alone any resheeting. But, you know, working with Jason, they've managed to juggle a few things around and make it happen. Because we've got to stop the squeaky and sort them where, you know, here's our information, guys, and this is the standard of your road. But there's guys down the other end of the Shire that are in, their roads are in far worse condition. And I agree, the science, we've got to use the science to level all that out, because there is too much of the squeaky wheel, because we hear it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I want to make sure that we're using this to its ability. And that might be extra training for the guys that are going out, not just to drive a vehicle and collect the data, but have a bit more knowledge about a road and how it should be maintained.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Through the chair, councillors, just to make 3 points. Number one, our road user groups is still our principal driver to engage with our communities out there. So that exercise is still where we get the opportunity to engage directly with those communities out there. Under that regime and our current work practice is level of service. We have currently, and we have to accept a certain level of service. We grade X road once a year, other roads less frequently or when there's need, and other roads get graded more often. I don't have a full handle on our levels of service, so that is current business. These two technologies, firstly, rougher meter, there's Western Shires that use rougher meters exclusively that says we won't grade a road unless rougher meter says it's of a certain roughness. So they will just simply, the road inspector will, when there's a complaint about a road, he'll get in his ute, can drive the road, and if it doesn't come up on the numbers, the council says no, we won't grade it or it hits those numbers. So we're not that reactive. We're using the science to input in decision making. The other thing about DCP, which I also want to talk up, is Are we the first council that's using DCP to determine gravel depths?
What's the name of it? Up near Tully, Big
Okay.
Boot. That council there, I wrote a position paper, or wrote a paper approximately 2 years ago, presented it to an IPWA conference where they said, we're going back to some basics and some fundamentals by using this simple tool. It's widely used in South Africa where they have hundreds of thousands of kilometres of unsealed network and obviously lots and lots of rural and agricultural areas there. So they use both the DCP over there widely. And but from my understanding is, what's the name of that council? Casseroe, sorry. Yes, they actively use it.
The reason is it's a non-destructive test that beats the guys getting on a shovel and digging holes in our gravel road to find out how much gravel they have. And this is a segue into our biggest challenge, and that is our total value of gravel road assets and how to depreciate it. I don't know if council remembers the conversation about depreciation. By knowing what depth of gravel we have, we'll be doing it more regular at these spots. We also get a better understanding of what our gravel loss is, and therefore we can also model our asset lives more accurate. So we're still arguing whether is it 8 years, is it 15 years? And quite frankly, ask anybody and you'll get a different answer. So with this type of approach, with this extra technologies, we can become smarter at, number one, working on our depreciation for our gravel road network, and also do our scheduling and programming a bit more efficient. But as it stands, road user groups and level of service as stands is still current business. This is just going to give us a lot more tools in the kit bag to make more informed decisions in the longer term.
Can this be used to identify better quarries, better gravel from different areas, as long as it's mapped, where it's put out and the life of that gravel? And
Yes, the DCP measures soil strength, material modulus, and subbase modulus, which can help in the development and design of roads. So we can use for almost anything road building.
So do you take a GPS reading each time you do the DCP sample?
We don't take a GPS reading, but the rough meter does collect the GPS location.
So if you were to take GPS readings and then gradually over several years, you would have different points. Wouldn't we know that for the DCP, not the... Sorry, did you say you have GPS?
Yeah.
Oh,
DCP?
No, that's one of the conversations we're having about setting up a trial to measure gravel in one particular road, one particular place, and actually get a model for gravel loss on segments for material types and traffic patterns.
if you're recording everything with an iPad, it's just a matter of taking a photo of where you're taking the hole, and that'll be GPS.
That's
I
right.
imagine so.
And the iPad also allows us to record GPS locations of where we've actually done the test with the collector app.
Awesome. Well, Ray, I am excited about this DCP and this rougher meter. I think this is fantastic. And as much as I'm picking up on everyone's comments about, well, all of those comments are very valid. As Councillor Lacey pointed out, we do get people hammer us quite often about roads. But one of the things that does come up quite often in the conversation to me is, well, why did you resheet that it didn't need doing, or why did you grade that area it didn't need doing? So at least, for me, this gives me more confidence in the work that you guys are doing to say that the work that happens on our roads is targeted, it is strategic. I think it will save us time, it will save us money, and see hopefully a better standard of road or in the unsealed network particularly delivered to the people in the Central Island. So that's great work.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we might go on to talk about some other aspects of the report, the water and
Who's
sewer.
talking about the water and sewage?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, in preparation for our comprehensive revaluations, which are occurring at this point in time, we leveraged the engineering co-op students to help us review our condition assessment methodologies, defect criteria, etc., and also our processes. So unfortunately, I don't have Kyla and Daniel with me today as they're assisting infrastructure in getting and DRRA defect data, so they're out on every far area or aspect of our region collecting that data. So in essence, it was probably the first time in a couple of years that we've done, I suppose, a deep dive into the way how we collect our data on water and sewage. And I suppose in doing the audit that we've done so far, we've come up with, we've found assets that we didn't have recorded. We've also found assets that were recorded but not there, assets that were in the wrong location, etc., etc. So I suppose the good aspect of that is, well, at least we're getting more accurate data. So I try to focus on that, not on potentially where the gaps were previously or why that actually occurred. Interestingly, the way how we devised where, like what Greg's example of getting sample data across the region, coming up with that sample data, we looked at all of that, probably for the last 5 years, the amount of customer requests that we had across the region for a water and sewage network, and then broke that down and did some analysis on whether they were for mains, nodes, etc., etc. And based on that, we developed a heat map. I don't have that with me today. I've got some examples if you'd like me to throw to you, just some examples. In Blackwater, for example, we had a particular sewer main, a water main that had 43 failures in 5 years, but our asset register had as a condition 1. So that can tell you about the importance of the work that we're doing in terms of addressing the data integrity. Also, we identified that material and construction dates were a particular challenge as well, or where we found that we had errors in our data there. But again, putting a positive note on it, at least we're getting the right data now and we can make sure that that's been uploaded into our asset management systems, so we have a better understanding about the health of our asset. And yeah, I suppose that's the main focus of the water and sewage asset condition. Any questions?
Margaret, anyone that takes a deep dive into sewage. But need to be commended for that work you've been doing there.
Well, there's actually another funny note in there where Carla and Daniel have said all sewer node assets in the sample size were also checked to ensure that they were located in accessible areas and not in people's backyards. So to make sure that we weren't doing that. So yeah.
And that's probably no surprise to find some of that mismatch in the data, like, you know, there's the number of rates versus the actual condition that's reported, because I think that's probably something we've suspected for quite some time. So yeah, so it'd be good to marry that data up for some accuracy, and once again, just make sure that our investment in those networks is where it needs to be.
Yes, and the important part of the work that's been done as well, again, is that we've updated collection forms, templates, processes and everything so that it is repeatable. So at the end of the engineering co-op program, we need to obviously look at resources to ensure that this type of work is ongoing, and we have cyclical routine inspection regimes, so it's not just this one-off, but it's repeatable. We've actually got all of the documented processes and procedures and collection forms that anybody can pick up and actually go and continue to do it. So ideally that will translate into operational processes and procedures within the water and sewerage section of council.
So, Councillor Chair, but how are you doing all communities?
Sample sizes right across the region.
It's one of the CRM through Springsure about hot water, water too hot to use during the day. They're actually putting water into their hot water system, turned off, to cool it. So this is, and they have done temperature and that sort of thing, so it would have gone through the CRM, I'd imagine. That sort of thing. Are you doing that sort of?
Through the chair, Councillor Rolfe, I've got the condition-related data I've got, the sample size based on those CRMs. it's like an algorithm that produces where we should go. So, I mean, we have done a level of analysis to say we need to, based on the population size within our various communities and based on the number of CRMs that we've received for there, that's what we then base our sample data on to then go and do the condition.
So this is, it's another area where when you don't have the population and you only have, you know, when you're working on things with, so there's not the population, so there's only maybe one CRM. So that sort of says to you through a logarithm that, no, we don't go to that one because it hasn't, you know, it's not in the next, in the line of doing the service, doing the search.
If you would like, through the chair, I actually do have, in anticipation of a question such as this, I do have a couple of spreadsheets here which I can actually show you the spread of the sample size if you'd like to look at that.
Through the chair, can I just clarify? When we say CRM, we're not saying, they're not just looking at CRM numbers, they're looking at CRM numbers relating to mains breaks and mains repairs. So we have to separate water supply, which is the hot water issue, from treatment and water supply to the network lines and go on and repair mains. I'm sure this secondary data sets down to that level. So a hot water CRM will not be picked up as a
mains break.
So I'm confident enough to say that that's the fundamentals of when we analyse CRMs. A network is very specific. All CRMs going to the network or is all to do with lanes.
Unless, as you say, Councillor Roll, the heat is causing deterioration of the
You know, maybe, I don't want to get down to the nitty-gritty of it, but we're going to. So maybe the mains it's under basalt there in Springshore and it's too close to the surface, it gets very hot. We have, 45-degree days. So, this is the sort of stuff that okay, so you're only doing mains breaks, water breaks. So this is another issue, obviously.
That relates to an asset though that's probably too shallow, so.
Through the chair, Councillor Roth, we're not just looking at main breaks, we're looking at leaks and a whole other range of data there. I'm sorry if I didn't articulate that properly, but.
So your sampling of the network is not purely based around where CRMs or breaks or leaks are.
Well, the CRM data over 5 years is quite comprehensive and breaks it down into not just, breaks, but talks about leakages and a whole lot of other things. I haven't got all of that data at front of mind, but it isn't just about a failure. It's about a whole range of incidences, for want of a better word, that council has to respond to for maintenance.
Across the assets.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But certainly they're good indicators. If you're getting CRM for multiple breaks in one particular section of the network, well then Houston, you have a problem. Generally, it's saying it's in condition 1 and it's not, and you've got 43 breaks or whatever it is, you just, yeah. So I mean, they're obvious areas to start with, but I'm sure as you cast them a little wider, you'll pick up on some other issues that are similar, right, like the heat issue in Springshore. So,
But that'd be a special case, wouldn't it? If we can't identify where it's coming from, how can you
it may not be
put that into, issues like breaks and like all of those common maintenance issues? You know what I mean? There's a problem there where our water's getting quiet.
Your CRM system was used in Blackwater to identify problem areas within Blackwater, and that was with coloured water. So they are used for more than just breaks, and you're using those CRMs to identify a problem area. And again, coming back to Blackwater, particular areas which had low usage were the areas where the most coloured water was showing up. And we did treat the whole system, but it was used as a method of finding the problem areas.
Essentially, we need to use all sources of information to help make the best decisions, particularly with subterranean assets. So the sampling work that gets done, it may identify a problem before we've even had any normal markets, you may not get a series of breaks, or you may not get the complaints, but it might predict that there needs to be a replacement of a certain section of mains. But we've got to take it all into account. There's stats and thresholds for number of breaks per, length of mains employed, and there's benchmarks and stats, and then we've got our CRM stuff. But I think what Margaret's been able to highlight is a disconnect between the reality and what's been kept as our data, and we've got to somehow reorganise our business so that the intel is represented adequately in the asset databases so that they can make predictive decisions, and that's where the disconnect is. So I think that what I'm picking up is that data continues to be a big problem, and getting integrity with that's difficult, but taking into account all those touch points of information is essential in representing that in the data.
Through the chair, I mean, this raises this issue that I'm loath to bring up, but I mean, we're now facing a budget process where our water and sewer utilities are questionably sort of asking for a change in cost and a rate of return, which has a significant bearing on the total rate bill. Now, through this great process, I might add, of the opportunity of having people cover these kind of opportunities that we have in our organisation to verify some of our asset checking. I mean, the reality is that it wouldn't give anyone any confidence that we have an accurate measure and getting a rate of return on assets that we have in water and sewer to be able to say this is what we're doing. And quite frankly, it's very disturbing. So I would think out of this, notwithstanding the very valid need to obviously deal with CRMs, this is more a strategic approach that says if our asset management keeps going on this road of being sort of discovered that we're not actually recording it well enough, or we haven't been, I get that. But if we're not going to do something about it that says, if we're going to make budget decisions about rates of return on all our utilities, and we don't fundamentally know what we're up for, then how can we do that? How can we really do that and tell our community that's what we're doing? I respectfully suggest that I talked about a full audit of our water and sewer systems before I would have any confidence of saying to our community, well, there's a real reason why our water and sewer costs need to go up or down when we don't actually know what it costs us. So I think that's something that's got to be looked at very, very seriously and soon.
Because we've probably got a whole heap of ticking time bombs out there. We might not be getting any CRMs in, or they just might be lying idle. And without that accurate data or that data integrity that you talk about, we just don't want any surprises within those subterranean assets, Scott.
No, and through the chair, the challenge has been, if you said that since forced amalgamations, the state of the assets in the four former councils would have been at a point where there would have been some backlog work to be carried out. And that was fairly normal for most councils. And then when you put those four councils together and you have a period of some years where the focus isn't on asset renewal and maintenance, you end up with a bigger problem. So we do have a backlog or a deficit that has to be addressed. And the way we've tackled it in the last few years has been more intuitively and with balancing the restraints. So with a limited budget and multiple areas where it has to be spent sometimes, and it's sad to say, but service assets like water and sewage have been neglected. They haven't received the amount of investment that they do need. The asset science will tell you what the gap is, but again, then we're going to be faced with that big issue of how do we redress it. It'll have to be done over a period of time. And that's why Council recently, towards the end of March, called for those 10-year CapEx projections. So we know what that renewal pattern looks like, at least over a decade. And then it's not subject to the whim of a particular budget or the pressures of that year. And it may be that we might need to fast track or be more aggressive with how we tackle some of that capital work deficit. It is a big problem, definitely not shying away from it. And I take the Mayor's point. It's difficult to set a price path or clearly identify what your return on capital or what your loss is until you can really comprehend what your capex is and what it needs to be in the future and what your OPEX is. So a lot of work to be done, and I still see that this next budget we will have more information than we've had previously on what to do with water and sewage, but the science won't be done, and it won't be done comprehensively for a little while, and we'll have to continually update what our planning documents say with the science. So again, it's a situation where there's no quick fix. There still needs to be a balance between what we do know and some intuition with setting the budget. And that can be a bit uncomfortable for some people, but that's what it'll have to be. Because once even if you had an external service provider come and do a comprehensive analysis on all of our water and sewage network and tell you exactly what you're up for, we won't have the funds to support the investment required. And that's why I think, even though it may be uncomfortable, using a degree of intuition or moderating what the budget is the best outcome, provided we can be aggressive with redressing some of the backlog in the first few years. There's not much point putting it into a 10-year profile and leaving it towards the end. So,
but I think through the chair, the point I'm making here is that it's kind of like the opportunity that these young people have had to look in on our place actually exposes that big problem of if that's what a third party who's very, I suppose, displaced from our organisation is just looking purely at what's in front of them. It's not good. So maybe our intuition is not good either. And it really does need that third party. Look, I think it was pre-1997 that Whitebait Water looked at the old Emerald Shire Council assets at that stage. And I'm not sure that there's been an external asset, correct me if I'm wrong, that or examination of our water and sewer assets. And we've had significant, obviously, capex in terms of certainly water supply here and other locations, and in Bluff as well. And I mean, it would be a case of, it really is getting to that stage where, those, I think asset management is indicating that there's a period of life in those things. But what is the cost? What are their costs of running? And it's not good at the moment. People are saying, well, we're not getting a rate of return. And then, we'll have to increase those costs. And we all know that, our communities can't afford those costs. So I think you've got to go a step further. I think, you've got to be prepared to say, well, look, do we now need to get someone in to look at the operation of our water and sewer? And I'm happy to, sorry.
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, for the comprehensive reval, we've actually got she's a professor of water and sewerage engineer, and she's actually been providing some external oversight and also been attending to those condition assessments with the students. And that information will obviously flow into our revaluation process. So whilst it's not a complete, like what you're suggesting there, it is another sort of level of technical assessment and advice there. There is also a piece of work, I understand, Gerard, on CCTV work that has recently gone to tender. I can't remember what particular area of the network that's doing, but that's got an external, so that's just one.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm getting a lot of data on what we've got, is how we're running is the issue. So I know that I understand they're two separate issues, but I mean, they're one and the same at the end of the day. Yeah. So it's, sure, we're more comprehensive, I suppose. You say all the pieces of the puzzle be in the box is how you run it. So.
Questions, queries, comments, councillors? Thank you. Thanks very much, Margaret and Ray, for that report. I just note that is for noting. There's just no actions in the resolutions. But no, thank you very much. So, councillors, we do have a couple of closed session items coming up, but I will just flip back to and just ask if anyone has any material personal interest, conflict of interest or personal benefits to declare. No? All right. Anyone got any general business? No? All right. Would someone like to move that we go into closed session? Move Councillor Lacey, Councillor Roll. All in favour? Yes.
The system.
So, live stream.